Welcome. I'm Jan Risher. We're happy that each of you are here today at the press conference to launch Alice in Mississippi, and so that you can learn more about this. I will serve as the moderator for today, and we're just really excited about sharing the Mississippi Alice report with each of you and others beyond this call. We're excited about the potential it offers to create a positive difference for many in Mississippi. But before we get started, we'd like to take a moment just to address a few housekeeping issues. First, if you are watching and you're a member of the media, if you could please email or comment in the chat. If you can comment your email address in the chat, or we will give you an email address for a woman named Joelle Poliski. She'll be handling media. And if you are on the call, if you don't mind making sure that you're on mute, that would be super helpful as well. So I believe Jonah is going to share Joelle's email address, and we also can put it on the screen there. We can move to the next slide. If you're part of the media and you don't mind, please just email or put your name and address or media affiliation in the chat. That would be helpful. We just want to be able to make sure you get whatever information you need and help you set up any interviews that you need. Additionally, if you're a part of the media and you would like to have permission to record any or part of this press conference, please just let us know. Robin McKinney is on the call and she will be able to grant that permission. And I know that some of you are already recording. Okay, so in the meantime, if you're watching and you have a question, you're welcome to post that as a comment, and that goes for media or anyone else who's watching. We'll come back around to the questions later in the press conference. And if you don't mind, just include your affiliation and location, especially if you're with the media with your question. And don't forget that everyone is invited to ask questions. We'll have a series of speakers today as part of the press conference, Alice experts and United Way executives and Mississippians who have firsthand insights into what it's like to be Alice. Please note that all questions related to regional activities will be deferred to the respective United Way CEOs of those regions across the state, and we will be happy to connect you with any of those specific people. And if you need the press release or access to the report itself, please just let me or Robin or Joelle know, and we'll get you all the information that you need. The report you'll learn about today reflects all counties in Mississippi. There are 17 United Ways that serve the majority of the state, but not all of the state. And you're looking right now at a map of service areas of the different United Ways across the state. We're also in the chat going to put a link to the Mississippi United Ways website. And on that website, you'll find access to the full report. And as a group, the United Ways are committed to working with the Alice project team to keep the information up to date to advance the work in Mississippi. Without further delay, please welcome Michelle Connelly, President and CEO of United Ways of West Central Mississippi.
Thank you all for joining us today. We're honored to have had the opportunity to partner with the Research Advisory Committee, who has worked with the Alice team in New Jersey, led by Dr. Catherine Connelly, whom you'll be hearing from shortly. The Research Advisory Committee members are scattered across the great state of Mississippi and have provided their insights and expertise on this project. We would like to recognize them and offer our deep gratitude for their participation. Some of them are on the call today and will be available to be interviewed regarding the report and its implications for the state. Along with the Research Advisory Committee and United Ways across our state, we are working together to equip communities with information to create innovative solutions. We are all grateful for the countless governmental, nonprofit, and business partners who find ways to help Alice, asset limited, income constrained employee. These people are the many hard workers across our great state, and because they work so hard, they earn too much to receive assistance, but still do not make enough to make ends meet. We all know Alice. Alice is the hard worker who waits on us. She's the one who fixes our cars, checks out our grocery store, and cares for our elderly and our young, and so much more. Alice represents hard workers, basic necessities of housing, food, childcare, healthcare, and transportation. Alice earns more than the federal poverty level, a level based solely on the cost of food, a level that does not take into account the cost of childcare, medical expenses, and technology, or many other factors that has drastically changed since 1963. The report you will learn about today has created a basic survival budget, which you will learn more about shortly, that clearly shows the gap between poverty and earning enough to survive. Matter of fact, 31% of Mississippians fall into this very gap. They are walking their personal economic tightrope with courage, grit, and hope. However, without the ability to get ahead, they are vulnerable. One setback, one illness, one natural disaster, or even one flat tire can take away any and all security Alice has worked to sustain. Until the arrival of the Mississippi Alice Project, this working group of Mississippians were practically an invisible group. Therefore, we believe that Alice should be a part of the conversation across Mississippi. These are the hard-working families who are working their fingers to the bone, but receiving little to zero public assistance. They are tired, they are frustrated, and they are working in a system that is not working for them. I'll now introduce Dr. Ira Murray, President and CEO of the United Way of the Capital Area.
Thank you, Michelle, and thank you all for joining us on the call today. United Ways throughout Mississippi have worked together to highlight and amplify the voices of people Michelle was just speaking of. People who work hard and yet struggle to make ends meet. People we call ALICE. I'll repeat the acronym that Michelle referenced. ALICE, Asset Limited, Income Constrained, Employed. Today, the Mississippi United Ways Association releases Alice in Mississippi, a financial hardship study. This report tracks struggling Mississippi households before and after the Great Recession, 2007 and 2010, and through 2019, yet before the pandemic. Of course, common sense tells us that the COVID-19 pandemic has worsened the situation for many. However, this report is based on data before the pandemic hit. It tells us that Alice households make up 31%, almost 1/3 of all households in the state of Mississippi. And that's on top of the 19% of households in Mississippi who live below the federal poverty level. That's 50%, half of the state struggling on a good day to make ends meet. You can view or download the full report on the Mississippi United Ways Association website. And that's msunitedway.org/Alice. That's msunitedway.org/ALICE. This report offers county-specific data, the level of poverty, and the percentage of Alice households. Now, we believe the Mississippi Alice Report deserves a place at the center of boardroom tables and dinner tables throughout the state. We believe the Alice Report can inspire the right kind of conversations in homes, nonprofits, churches, businesses, and at the municipal and state government offices. And we believe it is essential to have this data to shine a light on all of the Alices across the state of Mississippi. And we're encouraging everyone to join this conversation on social media and use the hashtag #MeetMSAlice. And then you can also follow the Mississippi United Ways Association on Twitter at MS United Way. Now, I'd like to take this time to say a special word of thanks to the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, who provided the funding for this project. And I especially want to thank Paula Sammons and Dr. Rhea Williams-Bishop, who worked tirelessly to improve lives across the state of Mississippi. We're grateful for all of your support in making this research possible.
Thank you so much, Ira. Thank you, Michelle, for all the good work that you guys have done. I know you've both worked on this project for a long time, and we appreciate the difference you're making in the lives of people in the state of Mississippi. Now I'd like to introduce Catherine Connelly. Catherine is a United for Alice's Director of Research Engagement. She researches and writes reports, provides data evaluation support for Alice initiatives, and contributes to the development of resources for United for Alice. With a strong background in community health, education, and advocacy, she facilitates the use of the Alice data by researchers and community partners to inform innovative solutions. Catherine has a doctorate in medical humanities from Drew University and a master's in health administration from Hofstra University. She's joining us today from her home office in New Jersey. Welcome, Catherine.
Thank you, Jan. And on behalf of United for Alice, it's my pleasure and I'm thrilled to welcome Mississippi into the United for Alice project today with the release of the first Alice in Mississippi, a financial hardship study report. So just to give a little perspective, United for Alice is a national grassroots movement that began in one county of New Jersey in 2009 and has since expanded to 24 states across the US. United Ways, corporations, government entities, academia, and other stakeholders are using the Alice data to inform strategies and solutions to create positive change for households that are struggling financially. ALICE, as you've heard, is an acronym for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, Employed. It describes households and the families and individuals in those households whose earnings are above the federal poverty level, but below the ALICE household survival budget. We create the ALICE household survival budget using publicly sourced data that presents estimated cost of a bare minimum household budget that includes housing, childcare, food, transportation, healthcare, and a basic smartphone plan for each county in the US. Yet ALICE is so much more than a statistic or a data point. We all know ALICE, our childcare worker, the person who cares for an elderly parent, the cashier at your local grocery who helped you get food during the pandemic, the person who fulfilled your online order at the warehouse. These are people that we rely on every day. They provide critical support for all of us in our economy. But ensuring that ALICE households are financially stable is important not just for the households and the individuals and families who live in those homes, but also for the communities where they live, the states, and our national economy. The 2021 report being released today provides a pre-pandemic benchmark and critical insight into financial hardship in Mississippi in 2019, when 19% of households in the state were living below the poverty line, and an additional 31% were considered ALICE. Combined, these households fall what we call below the ALICE threshold. In other words, 50% of households were struggling to afford a basic household budget. And this really set the stage for the dual health and economic impact of the pandemic. Next slide. The crux of the problem is that wages have not kept up with the rising cost of essentials. And as mentioned by Ira in the report, we talk about, we're using a decade of data now that goes from 2007 to 2019. And what happened is ALICE households were locked out of the post-recession economic boom between 2010 and 2019, largely because of stagnant wages. So that when the pandemic hit, ALICE households were most vulnerable to economic, food, and housing insecurity. So according to the basic household survival budget for the state, the average cost of living was above the federal poverty level, but at around $22,000 for a single adult and nearly $56,000 for a family of four with an infant and a preschooler. Many ALICE workers filled essential jobs during the pandemic, but yet as shown on the chart on the right, the majority of those workers were paid less than $20, and 2/3 of those even less than $15 an hour. Additionally, more than half of the working age adults in the state were paid hourly as opposed to having a full-time salary. The importance of that is that hourly workers are less likely to receive benefits such as health insurance, paid time off, and family leave, which were so important during the last year. Compounding the problem, ALICE households also have no additional income, so no ability to save, no ability to create a cushion for emergencies like the pandemic, and no ability to invest in the future, either in education or home ownership or even retirement planning. So ALICE households are found in every demographic group, in every race and ethnicity, in urban, suburban, and rural communities. And as you can see in the chart in this slide, the largest number of households below the ALICE threshold are in the largest demographic groups, surely in terms of numbers. So it's true that there are more white households than any other in really across the nation, but in Mississippi as well, than other groups. But what we see is that certain race and ethnicities are disproportionately impacted. So while 40% of white households were below the ALICE threshold, 66% of Black households and 53% of Hispanic households fell below the ALICE threshold. We also know that certain age groups are impacted. Senior households were at 54%, and also our single parent households obviously have a more difficult time with income, and so our single female-headed households were at 83%. So the pandemic has exposed these long-standing disparities that have existed for a long time. And as you're seeing here in the map on the right is that there's great variation in cost of living and wages across the state. And so the darker the blue, the higher the percentage of households that are living below the ALICE threshold. So what you see here is that in the Delta region and the southwestern part of the state, you'll find a higher number of households living below the ALICE threshold. If looking at county to county, the lowest percentage was in Madison County, so that's the whiter color there at 34%, and the highest percentage was in Holmes County at 73%. But there's variation even within counties, from town to town and zip code to zip code. So for example, in Jackson County, there was a low of 13% of households below the ALICE threshold in Big Point to 68% in Helena. So United for ALICE, as I mentioned, has been tracking the impact of financial hardship for more than a decade. And while the pandemic has highlighted these disparities, we've been tracking these for over 10 years. And what we're showing here is that during the Great Recession from 2007 to 2010, households that sat just one income bracket above the ALICE threshold fell into financial hardship by 2010 and never returned to pre-recession levels. So what we're keeping an eye on at this point is for the 2019 to 2022, tracking the pandemic and the impact again on those households that sit just above the ALICE threshold. And if those households are to fall below, that the percentage would raise to even higher than 50%. Next slide. So returning to the pre-pandemic economy is not a viable option for ALICE. To create a path forward, we're hoping that stakeholders will use the ALICE data to inform strategies and solutions and identify gaps and needs at the county, town, and zip code level. And we know that for successful intervention, that we need ALICE at the table, that ALICE's voice really matters in determining the steps forward. And we also know that it would take a cross-sector approach for collective impact that will, as a way to respond to the COVID-19 recovery, we're going to need renewed efforts to provide ALICE households with access to employment, affordable childcare, healthy food, quality healthcare, and stable housing. So for more resources and data on ALICE in Mississippi, you can visit, as was mentioned earlier, the Mississippi website. You can also visit our website at unitedforalice.org. And we hope that you'll follow us on United for ALICE on Twitter to learn more about all of the work that's going on across the US. So again, we're just so thrilled to have Mississippi join the project and to continue our work together in the years ahead. Thank you.
Catherine, thank you so much for all that information. And thanks also to each member of our Research Advisory Committee. You all helped play a tremendous role in creating this report, and we appreciate you tremendously. I'm Patty Parker, and I'm president of United Way in Northeast Mississippi here in Tupelo. And our next speaker, I'm so pleased to introduce. Her name is Julie Seawright. She is also from Tupelo. And Julie and her family appear on the cover of our Mississippi Alice report. They are Alice. And like so many people who are Alice, the Seawrights work extremely hard, but are still facing struggles sometimes to make ends meet. So Julie, thank you so much for being here today. And thank you again so much for sharing your story with all of us.
Thank you. As you can see, here's my family. There we go. Okay, you can go now. Okay, hey everyone. My name is Julie Seawright. My husband Jonathan and I have been married for 16 years. We have 2 sons, Carter, who is 10, and Morgan, who is 8. We are Alice. I've been a sign language interpreter for 16 years, and I work part-time at a nonprofit center in Tupelo called the Link Center. My husband works as a paint contractor and does DoorDash at night and on the weekends. I have an associate's in interpreter training technology and an associate's in business concentration general studies, and I'm finishing my business degree at Ole Miss. Our biggest struggle right now is medical care. We don't qualify for Medicaid because we make too much, so we can't get that for the boys. But because we're both self-employed, we don't have insurance through work, and purchasing private insurance through healthcare.gov would cost us about $1,500 a month. The boys and I go to a nurse practitioner for our ADHD and other mental health needs, and each visit for the 3 of us is $700. The 10 prescriptions that our family needs each month is another $200. And while we do use GoodRx, it's still expensive. And thankfully, our nurse practitioner has moved us to every 3 months, so that takes a bit of the burden off of us every month. And recently, I had to put off a dental cleaning for $250 and getting 3 cavities filled because it would cost $900, and we just couldn't afford that. And last month, I had an episode where I passed out multiple times, and I had convulsions. It was very scary, and it scared my husband, and he tried to have me go to the hospital, but I refused. But he got my mom in on it, and so of course I went to the hospital, and there we found out that they found nothing that would have caused it, and it wasn't seizures. And I'm really dreading the bills that will come in soon. We don't put off anything for the boys, but we have to wait for ourselves until we have the money. We don't receive any type of government assistance, and we're stuck in the loop of we make too much, but we don't make enough. And I did get unemployment for a few weeks when the pandemic hit, because suddenly I was not needed as an interpreter at ICC for the remainder of the semester. But I went back to work as soon as I could, and I was reluctant to get another job because if I left, that deaf student would not have another interpreter. So, and Jonathan could have applied for unemployment, but we didn't do that because we wanted just what we needed to make it. We didn't want too much. And last year, our kids were at home doing distance learning. So we had to work in shifts to make sure one parent was always home with them to help them with their schoolwork. And as of yesterday, Carter has been quarantined due to close contact with another student who had COVID. So now Jonathan is off for 10 days. That's both of his jobs for 10 days. And we were actually starting to build up an emergency fund before the pandemic hit, but it got used up quickly. And we were unable to make our house payment for 3 months while I was unemployed, but thankfully we were able to defer the payments and we got caught up as soon as I started working again. We've never had more than $1,000 in savings. When we get tax refunds, we usually have a medical issue that needs attention, or we pay off medical bills. And when unexpected things happen, like a car needing repair, we often delay getting it checked out because we're scared of how much it's going to cost. And so we go by with one car until we can afford to get it fixed. And there always seems to be some sort of medical need or something that the boys need that eats up our budget. And when I did work for school districts, I had insurance, but I made less than $30,000 a year. And the insurance didn't cover mental health visits or therapy. I make more now working for Ole Miss on a contract basis, but I don't have insurance. And so we pay everything out of pocket. And so at the end of the month, and sometimes the week, there isn't anything left to save. Cheaper healthcare that covered more would make our lives so much easier. If our nurse practitioner visits, dental visits, random medical needs, and medicines were covered, then we could save around $900 to $1,000 a month, or $10,800 to $12,000 a year. We don't think about how much we don't make often. We make enough to get by comfortably besides our healthcare needs. And we purposely live a little bit below our means so that we can do birthdays big for the boys and to make sure they have a great childhood. So going back to school full time and working 2 jobs is a struggle, but I think it'll pay off soon. And yes, I did make a B on trig at 37 years old. And hopefully I'll be able to get a job that offers good salary and good benefits. I wanted to share my story because I know many families in Mississippi who are in the same situation that we're in. And I'm glad there's a name for us, Alice. I hope that can help bring awareness to those of us who live in the gap between poverty level and being able to afford everything we need, despite working hard. So thank you for the work to create the Alice Report to represent families like mine.
Julie, thank you so much. And here's a big round of applause to you for making a B in trig, girl, and so much more. Congratulations. Really proud of you. Keep up the good work. Keep hope alive. So before we open the call for questions, I'd like to offer a few reminders. If you look on our Facebook page, you'll find the Alice graphics that we are encouraging you to share. And we're really asking everyone to share these because we don't know who can do something with the Alice report. You know, we're hopeful that perhaps service groups or churches who are looking for special projects in their towns or communities can look at this and see perhaps that they've got, for example, 83% of single moms who are struggling to make ends meet and start some sort of programming specifically for them that would work for their community. If you haven't downloaded the report yet, or if you need the correct address to share it with the public, here you go. Just remember it's missunitedway.org/Alice. Additionally, if you are interested in the media, we do have some Excel data that's available to you. We'd be happy to send you those Excel reports if that might help you create some charts and graphs. And a final reminder to the media that if you have further questions or you need assistance with connecting to a specific United Way CEO or a research advisory committee member, just let me know or Joelle know at that address that we connected you with earlier, and we will be happy to do the work to make that work out for you. So at this point, we would like to open the floor for questions, and you can ask questions to whoever, and we'll find the right person to answer it. Just remember to, if you're from the media, to let us know your media affiliation and location. So let's see, I'll start with questions about the report. Let me look at the chat here, see what we've got. If you have a question, you can take yourself off of mute and go ahead and ask it, in fact.
Hey, Jan, this is David Byes at Mississippi State, and I was honored to be on the Research Advisory Committee. I was intrigued by all the challenges that Alice face, and wondered, so we hear a lot about what resources they don't have access to. What resources do they? What federal resources are available for Alice?
Catherine, would you like to take that question?
Hi, David. Yes, thank you for your question. I mean, I think it really varies across, depending on the household's situation. One of the things we were tracking is Alice's access to SNAP, which was a big issue during the pandemic, food security. And so we know that that 28% of households that are living below the Alice threshold, only 28%, I should say, had received SNAP benefits. So while some are accessing it, it does seem to be still underutilized, and that other people are not eligible for the program. So that's one federal program that we've been tracking. And of course, there's many federal programs and services available, but as we mentioned, many times Alice households are not eligible for those programs.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Connelly, but is that part of the point of Alice, just to create that gap, to demonstrate the gap between the poverty level and what it actually takes to make ends meet?
Yes, and that's really how the project got started, more than a decade ago. It's just that some of the United Way colleagues in New Jersey had recognized that there was this population, an often hidden population, that was not being serviced. So in terms of putting out their grants at that time, that they weren't really reaching enough people who were struggling financially, that there was a much bigger group beyond just the federal poverty level, which is why many organizations use multiples of the federal poverty level for determining eligibility for programs and services as well.
Great.
So we find a lot of the strategies that United Way's and their partners and stakeholders are using are really collaborative efforts, between stakeholders. They come up with all kinds of initiatives, from small initiatives, things like stocking food pantries and providing, back to school supplies, to much larger initiatives that are coalitions of partners that are doing, much larger types of initiatives, that helping households build financial stability through savings programs, through budget coaching, trying to give them access to things that would allow to improve their financial stability. So it really runs the gamut.
So Carolyn Wood from WDAM in Hattiesburg has a question. She's asking, what are some of the proposed resolutions for ALICE individuals? And if intervention has to happen across all sectors, what are some steps to take? And you were touching on that some, Catherine, but is there anything else you'd like to say about that?
Yeah, and I just want to say that the United for ALICE doesn't really prescribe policy or interventions. What we know is that it's very interconnected across all of those budget categories within our budget. So housing, childcare, transportation, all of those, there's a lot of interconnectivity there. That's when we're talking about cross-sector, approaches and collaboration. But we don't actually prescribe what the policies should be. We really leave that up to the local or the state partners to identify what their public policy priorities are. But many of the United Ways across with that being said, across the U.S. are working on things like the EITC, child care tax credits, things like that, housing stability, food security, access to child care. So, I mean, those are the issues and that we know are important for ALICE households. But we don't really, the Unite for ALICE project doesn't really prescribe policies per se.
All right. Sammy Moon has some questions along the same lines. And Sammy, from what I know and what she's just said, I think that the EITC and childcare and prescription help are and financial training. I know that there's been a lot of success with United Ways in Texas and Louisiana regarding financial stability training and then getting people who are involved in those programs into different savings programs. And then I've even worked with a couple in Texas who then has graduated on to buying their first house. And it was just a series of programs, actually all through United Ways or through United Relay Connected, that allowed them to do that. Beth Palmer has a question, and we would appreciate your response to this, Catherine. How does Mississippi's refusal to expand Medicaid affect ALICE?
Yeah, I might want to defer that to someone on the RAC or Research Advisory Committee or even one of the local United Way partners who are more familiar. I mean, I have a basic knowledge that Medicaid expansion did not occur in Mississippi, and we touch on that very briefly in the report. But I don't have a lot of expertise in that area in Mississippi. So if there's someone locally that wants to talk to that a little bit, how it's impacting lower income households, that has not been expanded in the state.
Dr. Buys or someone else from the Research Advisory Committee, is there anything that you'd like to add there, or Ira?
I mean, I could just say that Medicaid expansion we know helped households that were, lower income households that were not able to access, help them to gain access to health insurance. I mean, in a very basic way, we know that helps ALICE, but yeah, I'm sure this is something that has been discussed a lot within Mississippi.
The next question, and Ira, I'm going to throw this one to you. How's United Way helping to educate legislators about Alice?
Thanks, Jan. That's a great question. So in Mississippi, obviously we're on the front end of this, and I think that is something that I know we've had internal conversations about that as Mississippi United Way directors. And we know that's going to be one of the next steps for us moving forward is that legislative engagement, not just to share the information, but also offer up some possibilities. One thing we have seen in Louisiana, which shares a lot of similarities with Mississippi in terms of the Alice population, is that they were able to utilize their Alice report to promote the expansion of the state earned income tax credit in Louisiana. And using the Alice study data, they were able to convince legislators to double the EITC there, which actually helped bring some families out or above the Alice threshold. And so while that we haven't come up with any specific recommendations based on the Alice data yet, because obviously it's very fresh, those are some of the things we're keeping in mind as some very, I think, easy kind of low-hanging fruit, if you will, for us to do as a state to support these types of families. So that's just one example. But if you look at states like Michigan, states like Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, New Jersey, they've got a lot of success in the way they've been able to engage legislators, and we're looking forward to having similar success down here in Mississippi.
And Beth, in answer to your question, I'll also say that I know that other states have done a lot of individual meetings with legislators and other public service leaders. Just, it takes a while. This is a lot of data, and it takes some time to really appreciate. I'm not sure you can really appreciate all that's there ever, but just to gain that incremental knowledge and understanding takes time, but it does eventually sink in with some of the people, and they become real advocates for Alice. And I've watched that in my work with other states as well. So Linda, I believe that Ira addressed your question regarding other states, but if you've got something else about that, please let us know. And then Deborah is asking about when Julie Seawright spoke, she said that she worked for a school district, but didn't have insurance and didn't cover mental health. Is mental health another potential issue that could help Alice folks? Who would like to address that? I mean, I will say clearly it could address it. Catherine, is there anything specifically that you could add there?
Yeah, I just know that mental health is a big issue, not just for Alice households, but sort of across the board, but certainly for people who are experiencing financial hardship. And we know with the pandemic that mental health issues were exacerbated. There was a lot of anxiety in response to the pandemic across age groups, coming with the uncertainty of the pandemic and also with social isolation. So mental health is certainly a really important issue in addition to healthcare. I think it's definitely part of the healthcare piece of this that we need to address both, not just health, not just physical health, but mental health.
And another great example of a specific need that could be brought to light, and you've got data with the Alice report to if there was an organization that was interested in addressing that for their community, for example.
Yeah, you can certainly combine the Alice data with other data sources. So if there are, say, mental health indicators that you're tracking or following, you can use that, you can map that or use that alongside with the Alice data to help identify areas of need, where there's a high percentage of households below the Alice threshold. So we do some of that on our website. We've just started actually trying to include more data indicators on our site. So if that's an issue that's of interest, we're always looking to add more data indicators to our site to help further work in all of these areas.
We're getting ready to round it out here and finish up, but I will just say that I have worked with different states on the Alice report, and one of the first things I did, and this was back in 2016, is I interviewed a woman who was Alice in Louisiana, And when we explained to her what Alice was, asset limited, income constrained, and employed, she was a single mother. And she was just so relieved because she felt, and I found this over and over as I talked to different people who realized that they were Alice, they feel often like they're doing something wrong, like it's their fault that they can't make the ends meet. And in fact, just the pure math of it makes it the way that it is. But the first one who I spoke with, her name was Ashley, and she said, I'm just so glad there's a name for me now. And one of the issues that she had was applying for food stamps. She had to get off work to go apply for food stamps because of just the hours of it. So even practical things like that, of changing the hours of different services or when application time is available, can make a difference for people. So is there one last question, or is there anything else that Ira, you'd like to say as we close?
If there's not another question, I'll just say, on top of everything that's been said already, we really look at this Alice study, this report, the data, stories as opportunities for us to rethink how we engage communities and how we are able to serve and support families throughout all of our communities throughout the state. We pay so much attention sometimes to the families who really are struggling the most that sometimes we don't see the other families who are struggling right in front of our eyes. And the thing that's so striking about Alice is, these are people we interact with every day. These are people who we deemed essential, many of them, over the past year and a half, but sometimes treat as disposable. And it's time that we really started digging into what we can do better to serve these families. And so, I think of Connecticut, and one of the things they did with their Alice research was, they discovered that there was not only an income vacuum with many women with children in their community, but also a childcare vacuum. And they used, and that came from the Alice report, and they used that as an opportunity to engage women, to train them to be childcare providers. So not only do you solve or begin to address the income issue, but you also address the childcare issue. And you're allowing more people to go to work. You're allowing more people to go back to school. You're improving the quality of life. And I think that's the power of the Alice research. It's not just the information, but the fact that it opens our eyes and expands our horizon in terms of the opportunities that are right before us to empower families, empower communities, and help people achieve the dreams that they have for themselves, their children, and their families. And so this is just the beginning. This is an opportunity to engage around this, but it certainly isn't the end point. And it certainly is just scratching the surface of what we can do as a state to continue to improve the lives of everyone across the state of Mississippi. So thank you, everybody, for coming aboard. We hope this isn't the last time we see you. And we hope that you just continue to engage us, ask us the tough questions, continue to demand updates, continue to demand information, because that's really largely what this is about, is us being accountable to one another and the people across the state of Mississippi.
Thank you, Ira. Thank you to everyone. Thank you, Dr. Connelly and Michelle and Julie. We especially just applaud your courage for telling your story. That takes serious bravery. And as with all big problems, there's not an easy answer here, but it's going to take the creative thinking of individuals and collectively to address specific problems. So we appreciate your time in learning about the Alice report. Please download it, please share it, please help spread the word. The best way that this will make a difference is for the right people to know, and that means more people need to know. So yes, Linda, there will be a road show across the state. United Way executives across the state are available to speak at service clubs. And if you have something in your area that that you would like, that they all have their presentations ready to go. And they're probably ready to kick me right now, but they do. And so if there's an opportunity to have someone come speak in your area about Alice, just let us know. We're ready to do that. All right. Thank you guys so much. Please share the word.
Thank you.
Thank you.